Today we're going to take you for a ride on the side of the land of the rising sun, where nothing is impossible, or at least that's what was thought until we discovered that the Japanese have a series of taboos that may seem trivial and about which they are inflexible. Fasten your seat belts, we're taking off to Japan, this East Asian country that you'll see today from a completely different perspective. Once you've finished this video, you'll really start to believe, just like me, that the Japanese come from another planet other than ours. If you have plans to visit Japan and you're tattooed from head to toe, or even just with a small visible tattoo, turn around because in Japan it's highly frowned upon to have tattoos, and it's even worse to proudly display them in front of everyone. If you dare to show your tattoo in public, you risk being banned from certain places like pools, public baths, gyms, and many ryokans, the famous Japanese inns. Even if they realize you're a foreigner, Japanese people believe it's your duty to respect their customs and do everything possible to hide your tattoos. Sure, there are many tattoo enthusiasts in Japan, but they keep them completely covered for social and employment reasons. Even members of the Yakuza, a rebellious mafia known for their prominent tattoos, traditionally opt for locations usually covered by clothing. This shows how much tattoos are disapproved of in Japan. You might be wondering why this happens. Well, I don't know more than you, but they don't view it favorably, that's all. You caught a cold, you're sick as a dog, your nose is constantly running, and as if that weren't enough, you're in Japan for work. Can't you see the connection? Well, in Japan, it's very frowned upon to blow your nose in public, considered a big lack of respect towards the people around you. Worse yet, it's perceived as an insult. This doesn't mean that Japanese people don't get sick, but when they do, they prefer to swallow the nasal mucus rather than letting it out, as it's considered as dirty as urine. So if you blow your nose in the subway, it's as if you're urinating or doing your business in public in front of everyone. That's how they see the situation. Now, everyone sees the situation as they want. Personally, I can't imagine sniffing my nasal secretions. And you, what would you do in such a situation? If you go to Japan, you won't be offered ice cream with 4 scoops, you won't see the 4th floor in a building, nothing is sold for the price of 4 yen, you'll never get change back with 4 coins, you won't ever buy a pack of water with 4 bottles, and they rack their brains to avoid having 4 wheels on transport vehicles. Well, in that last part, I'm exaggerating a bit, but it's true that in Japan, the number 4 is feared to the point of almost not being used. The number 4 is considered unlucky because it's associated with death, much like Friday the 13th for us, but they firmly believe in it. This is explained by the fact that a long time ago someone spread this false belief, some people believed in it, it spread, and the rest you know. The number 4 is considered unlucky on such a large scale that you'll see many examples of this fear in everyday life in almost all East Asian cultures. For example, in China, military aircraft start with the number 5, or like elevator J5 in Korea, the 4th floor will be labeled as F instead of 4. The Korean National Railway Company skipped the locomotive number 4444. Taiwanese and South Korean Marines don't use the number 4 in their identification numbers. So in Japan you'll rarely see the number 4. Whenever possible, they replace it without hesitation. This has become completely paranoid for me. Since I returned from Tokyo, I avoid the number 4 as much as possible, perhaps out of habit, even though I know it's irrational and unfounded. And what about you? Are you superstitious to the point of fearing a number? This is a practice that your grandmother would greatly approve of. Yes, your grandmother, who spends her days sweeping her living room, vacuuming the interior, sticking stickers on the walls so that you and your brood can come over on the weekend to destroy everything and turn her house into a skating rink. If there's one practice the Japanese are unwavering about, it's this: taking off your shoes every time you enter from the street. So you'll notice that on every doorstep, there are rows of shoes of different sizes because in Japan, shoes are never worn inside the house. When you come back from school, work, or when you're invited to someone's house, you take off your shoes at the door, line them up, and put on the indoor slippers your host has specially reserved for you. It's their way of honoring you. Sometimes, when you enter a house, you'll notice a separate room near the entrance where all the shoes are taken off. This entry room is called the Rejection. Traditionally, the Japanese like to draw a clear line between inside and outside. Even if the room is technically inside the house, it's always considered as if it's outside and usually has a different floor covering than the rest of the house. If you visit someone's house in Japan, make sure to stop first at the Rejection to take off your shoes. Another good tip is to turn your shoes towards the door after you've taken them off. Don't ask me why. This is what you should do to avoid getting a kick in the butt from a hostile person wearing large animal slippers on their feet. You're having a great time with your friends at the best restaurant in Tokyo, so pleased with the service that when leaving the table, you leave a tip for the waiter. This is a big mistake. In Japan, it's strictly prohibited to leave tips for the waiter, or even for the taxi driver, hairdresser, doorman, bellboy, and anyone who provides you with a service for which they are paid. Even if it's just an extra thank you, in Japan, this can be considered polite and insulting in many situations. By the way, most Japanese restaurants require customers to pay the bill at the cashier, instead of leaving money for the waiter or waitress. And as for tipping, it's also not customary for taxi or bus rides and for many hotel services. In Japan, you're likely to receive one of the best services in the world, but these people do their job with pride, not for your pretty eyes, nor do they expect a tip from you. So don't feel embarrassed when someone serves you as they should, that is, in the best possible way. Before continuing, don't forget to click here to subscribe if you enjoyed this video and activate all notifications to not miss any of our upcoming videos. If for you, just the act of eating sushi with chopsticks is a real challenge, for other enthusiasts of Japanese culture, eating with chopsticks is quite an art. And if you thought you mastered this skill, you'll discover there's more to learn about the unique way Japanese people use chopsticks, known as hashi or oshi. If you're polite, you'll realize that you need more etiquette than you imagined. So if you have the habit of occasionally going out to eat Japanese food with your boss, listen to what follows. If you're eating with chopsticks, it's important to place them, after finishing, on a chopstick rest, called hashioki, which should normally be provided. Under no circumstances should you place them on your plate. If you don't have one available, you can make one from the paper packaging in which your chopsticks arrived. After finishing the meal, put the chopsticks back in the bag and fold the end of the bag to indicate that you're done with the meal, something that nobody does. If the tips of the chopsticks are dirty, clean them with paper, and above all, don't use your mouth to remove the dirt. Also, place the chopsticks horizontally on the table or tray, with the tips pointing to the left, because in Japan, it's considered rude to leave the tips facing the other person. If you use chopsticks, even if you use them to bring food to your mouth, don't let them enter it, much less to clean the rice that's stuck between your teeth. Also, avoid making unnecessary movements with the chopsticks, use them only for their main function. Don't point at anyone, not even unconsciously. Oh yes, I almost forgot. As the Japanese are very superstitious, especially when it comes to matters related to death, keep in mind that you should never pass food from one chopstick to another, as it resembles the way cremated ashes are transferred to an urn. And never put your two chopsticks vertically in your bowl, since during funeral ceremonies, a bowl of rice is left aside with two chopsticks planted vertically in it. With all this, you'll adopt an attitude somewhat similar to that of a true respectable Japanese. If in your country it's normal to reject something, even if it means offending the other party, in Japan, rejection is done with care, almost with tweezers, because it's very delicate to refuse without being considered disrespectful. To decline an offer, express any type of negativity, or simply show disagreement, the Japanese don't settle for using a simple no, which would remove anyone from any embarrassing situation. Instead, they resort to more subtle and complex techniques. Why make it simple when you can make it complicated? For example, they use courtesy formulas that can be 3 meters long before declining politely. They opt for negative or concessive phrases, like "I would really like to, but I'm afraid it's difficult." They demonstrate humility and consideration, using a tone of apology, all of this to remain polite and well-mannered. For us, a no is a no, without beating around the bush. It's a shame for those who don't like the number 4. If you see Japanese tourists with their cameras photographing everything, including people, it's because later they take care to blur the faces of strangers. This is because, in Japan, photographing someone's face in public is not considered a crime, but it can be considered a civil offense if the person photographed finds their image published somewhere. They can sue the photographer for privacy violation, so people photograph everything and everyone and then hide the faces. That's why in most Japanese blogs, YouTube videos, and TV programs, the faces of the viewers are blurred, a painstaking and artistically painful process for any passionate creative, but at least they have peace. Don't be surprised if, when visiting Japan on Valentine's Day, you don't see anyone kissing, hugging, or showing affection in public. This is frowned upon. In addition to being reserved and modest by nature, most Japanese also believe that drawing attention to oneself in public is bad manners. They feel even more uncomfortable displaying affection in public. It's not a matter of lack of courtesy or religious restrictions, but simply of modesty. As the famous Jules Joly said, "The hour is the hour, before the hour is not the hour, after the hour has passed." Everything indicates that he had a bit of a Japanese mentality, as the Japanese are strictly punctual. In Japanese trains, for example, schedules are followed rigorously, down to the minute. If a train is delayed even by a few minutes, the railway company will issue a delay certificate at the stations. It is customary to strictly adhere to arrival and departure times, as delays are considered one of the critical errors that harm the reputation of students or employees in schools and society. Therefore, if a Japanese friend schedules a meeting with you at 22:17, it will be exactly at 22:17, not a minute more or less.
You are our major sponsor. This video required many hours of work, love, and dedication to be completed. Therefore, your participation is what keeps us inspired to grow even more and reach a larger audience with this valuable content. Subscribe to our channel, like, and share this video with others, as this is how YouTube will understand that you enjoyed this content and will present it to more people. Now, if you want to watch content as good as this, click on the video that's appearing on your screen. Thank you for watching, and until next time.